Welcome
Dude!
And just for that, that's going to be how we open this episode. Welcome to Brotherhood, a spoiler-filled podcast where we review each episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. My name is Dylan MacArthur, the older brother.
And my name is...
I didn't know that our mother decided to name our brother...
Okay.
I bet your teachers hated calling you for attendance. And now for the sorting hat. MacArthur!
Hufflepuff.
Let me reason.
But I want to go to Gryffindor. Dang it, everyone's been asking for that lately. Just shut up and take it.
Go ahead and restart.
And my name is Timothy MacArthur, the taller brother.
And my name is Hannah MacArthur, the lovable but disturbed sister.
Today's episode, Reunion. This episode begins with Ed, Ling, and Envy having their battle royale to the death or whatnot. And, you know, pretty much exactly where we left it up at the last episode. Hannah, you were the first one with a note, so go ahead and tell us what you wanted to say about this.
Envy slams Ed on, I guess, the floor. That slam should have killed him.
Also, she slams Ling against a pillar. That slam also should have killed him. Also, the fact that he is, like, coughing up blood at that moment is kind of, I don't know, a bit of a stretch. Like, I'm pretty sure that human anatomy doesn't work that way, that you just, like, hit someone hard enough and it's like, something's got to be punctured in order for that to happen. But anyway, as Ed makes his move on Envy, not that kind of move, but a different kind of move, we see
As
the
in
faces.
a move of attack, not a move of romance.
Bow chicka wow wow. He sees a face crawling out of Envy because there are so many faces to spare. And these faces are all like, oh, we're so miserable. Ed, save us, or like, do
And
something.
then we have a guest appearance from the Joker. This time, he's green and bald.
It's not easy being green or bald.
And you see all of these suffering people, and I feel like this would be a sad scene if it weren't so dang hard to process. There is just too much to look at.
I think that the decision to have a sudden random cackling mad person show up kind of deflates the tension of the scene. It's like, oh, I guess the tone is not what I thought they were going for. We were going for a dark and kind of morose tone, and now instead we're going for a Batman Arkham Asylum kind of a tone. That's a little different. Not that either of those two tones are better or worse, but the fact they just don't mesh well together. One of the things that I do like about this, even though it definitely is a little too much, is the way that it gives us a visual cue to demonstrate what a Philosopher's Stone is. Yes, we know, Philosopher's Stones, it's people. But being able to see that and having a visual reminder of that helps us to understand the stakes of both finding one and using one. There's a reason that this show starts off with us seeing, oh yeah, Envy is actually thousands of innocent people. It's not just a mustachioed ham.
Not just a mustachioed ham.
Because we're going to see in this episode that these people still kind of have their own identities, even if it's a twisted and dark one. In fact, Hannah, you had a note about one particular voice that calls out to Edward from the void of Envy.
As he's looking at this mess of people, he hears the voice of Nina calling out and say, hey, do you want to play? And clearly, this is a kid who has PTSD.
The comparison between Nina Yeller, as I call her, and the souls that make up Envy is intense and creepy, but also really cool.
Part of the problem with this is that it's not actually a particularly strong comparison. The only purpose that this serves is to remind Ed of the tragedy of alchemy that he is basically spending the entire show trying to make up for the fact that he wasn't able to save Nina. The problem with this moment is, again, the same problem as introducing a crazy cackling madman when you're trying to sell the fact that these are thinking, feeling human beings that are suffering, and suddenly you have somebody saying, hey, want to play? You know, everybody else around me is clearly suffering, but I'm not suffering, which kind of muddies the whole reason of showing these people suffering in the first place. And that you two are. As Ed is flung by Envy onto the ground, he takes a look in a book, and he sees to his side that there is this weird, like, outline of a maybe transmutation circle thing with a lion dude on it.
That he's seen before in Xerxes and in the first opening.
That's probably not going to be important in 5 minutes from now. Quick question, because Dylan of the past, when he saw that, was totes like, oh, hey, I saw that thing in Xerxes. I bet that's important. I bet that he's going to be able to use that to create a transmutation circle to get himself out. What did Hannah from the past and Timothy from the past think about this scene?
I don't remember.
Do you want to talk to Hannah from the past?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
What?
Hannah from the past, what did you think about this scene?
Whoa. He just got hit really hard. Wait, I noticed that he noticed that, but, I guess it's that thing from Xerxes.
Do you think that that's going to be important somehow? Do you think that that's going to be essential to his escape?
Probably. This is years before I learned anything about literature.
My Hannah from the past, you have an astute understanding of your future as a person. This revelation... Oh, thank you, Hannah from the past. That's all that we really needed from you. Enjoy your time discovering books and the joys
Wait, what happens in the future?
You lose all your hair. I'm sorry. Goodbye. Okay, so the problem with this scene for
I love
me,
how you make it so that Hannah now has to live her life in fear for most of her past.
it's not just the fact that it's obvious, because, like, we need a way to get out. And I'm fine. At this point, we've spent long enough in this cave of wonders that I don't really care how they get out. I just want them to happen.
So are you sure it's a cave of wonders or a cave of terrors?
And to your left, you can see even more blood. Take a picture, everyone, because it'll last forever. The fact that I, as an audience member, have caught on to where this show is going to go long before Edward has is a bit of an issue, mostly because at this
it makes Edward look stupid.
Well, I mean, part of that, but more importantly, the bigger reason is that we have spent so much time in this location already. It is due for an upgrade. We are due to do something else, but the show isn't ready to take us there yet, and so we've just got more drama and conflict to go through, which has kind of overstayed its welcome.
This kind of reminds me of how before you had given all of these theories about Central and how it looks like a transmutation circle, and then Marco basically says what you had already figured out a couple episodes back.
And well, that for me was okay. I just sort of assumed like, oh yeah, it's the world is a circle, and circles are important in this because they make magic stuff happen. So that's probably what's going to be happening. I just took that as a bit of me getting a little bit ahead of where the show wanted me to do, because the narrative wasn't ready to use that until many episodes in. The problem with this scene is that the narrative is more than ready for them to move on. There isn't a whole lot left for them to do in this space. And so we've just sort of got to twiddle our thumbs and introduce a little bit more conflict that doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, like, anytime that you basically have to knock out your character and have them go, oh, it's the end. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, now we can do something. Envy recognizes that this is his chance and decides that he is going to lap up Edward like a dog does water, apparently.
Except he takes his precious time and then bites his tongue, which should hurt, especially because you see chunks of it flying off when he bites down on it.
Oh, and speaking of Envy's tongue, I've got a note pertaining to that. Ahem. Yeah!
It looks suspiciously like the trees in Over the Garden Wall, how they have the faces embedded into the bark. Like, even the color is very similar.
But whereas in Over the Garden Wall, the trees weren't necessarily gross, this is absolutely disgusting, Envy's tongue.
The uncanny valley is a great thing to use when you're creating horror. The act of putting a face somewhere that it doesn't belong is instantly horrifying. And you actually have to try really hard to make it not terrifying. Like, let's put a face on a duck. Oh no, is this going to kill you, Johnny? Is the duck...
Another good example is in Snow White. You have the scene where she's seeing the forest as something more horrifying than it really is. And she sees all of these creepy faces on trees and everywhere around her.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Don't we cut to a scene of Human May, I think is what I was going to call her?
Yeah, Mei Chang is walking around. She's looking for her dear friend Xiao Mei along with Scar, because Scar's her bro now. There's not a huge amount of revelation going on here, but the little details of this scene are just so delightful. Her imagination of what might be happening to Xiao Mei as he's being held prisoner by the giant metal dude, that is one of those delightful details.
The giant metal dude is Al, and she imagines him as some kind of demon. A cartoony demon.
And it is a great example of dramatic irony. She has no idea what's really going on.
Oh yeah. The fact that Al is the more monstrous of the two is just so wonderful, because of course we know that actually it's the opposite.
Come to think of it, most of the jokes that involve her have to do with dramatical irony, because at the beginning we introduce her and she's swooning over and she's just like, oh, he must be so hot. Not really. When she first sees him, she doesn't even recognize him. She's just like, oh, what's up with these two people?
Oh yeah, that's true. We don't know that yet in this show. She just knows about these two monsters that she hates, one of whom is super short and the other whom is super scary. This is very interesting. I also love her animation after, like, she has brought this scene into her own mind of Xiao Mei being tortured. She suddenly has this, like, intense martial walk that she's like, we are going to save her. It's like, it's one of those lovely animation touches that didn't need to do that, didn't need to go through that extra effort, but they did, and I love it because it's a great acting choice. It's a great performance moment on her part.
And then Mei Chang sees Xiao Mei with the metal dude, or Al.
What are the odds, right?
And then there's also Gluttony with Al, and they're both going to go into this lair.
Yeah, they're both getting ready to descend into the pits of hell. What I love about this is that we all know at this point that Scar is going to become an alliance of convenience. It's only a matter of time. Like, they've done a pretty good job of pointing us in that direction. But before we get there, now we get to see Scar figure out whose side these two are on. Because for all that he knows, these two are bad peoples. Ed and Al. And he's seeing them with a homunculus. Suspicious. Scar, rightly so, is having little alarm bells going on in his brain of being like, I don't like what I'm seeing here. And I love how he says the line that he has, why are those two together? Because, of course, like, we know why they're together. It's not for us that he says that, but it is important for us to see that he is running through the mental calculations on his own of what are the alliances that I need to be aware of, and how many of them are transient as opposed to permanent.
More dramatical irony.
Yep.
Oh, and also, haha, Scar calls Gluttony fat. He also calls Gluttony a dangerous opponent, but mostly fat.
Also, for whatever reason, May doesn't process the fact that invincible means you can't win.
But didn't he say, like, they were almost invincible? Not absolutely?
Yeah, but that still means he's gonna be really difficult to beat.
All that we need out of that short little interaction of, oh, look, they're over there. Oh, but they're dangerous. Oh, but they have more immortality. Okay, let's go. Like, the whole reason for that moment is just for them to say, okay, now our goal isn't just to find Xiao Mei, it's to sneak behind these people and find out where they're going. All that does is subtly change what the objective is for what they're going to be doing over the next several beats.
After they've had this conversation and they head in, Mei reminds us what Ling introduced to us, and that is the city is weird and the homunculus are weird. Father feels weird.
And there's something going on underground, and oh my gosh, I love that. When Ling started it, one of his first big dramatic moments coming into Central was saying, there's something strange about this land. There's something like going on under the ground. Now Mei Chang is reaffirming this. What we are getting here, it is the exact way that you go about creating a really scary situation. You start off by telling us there's a monster. There's something out there and it's going to get you. It's what we have with Mei Chang. She says there's something going on underground. There's something moving. There's like multiple creatures, I guess, that are like crawling underground. And we're like, okay, that's creepy. And you get this horrifying image of like monsters crawling around underground being like, we're chimeras, we're gonna get you. Next step, after you tell us there's a monster, have nature reject that. You mentioned Xiao Mei shivering and like utterly terrified. Xiao Mei is our connection to nature in this instance. An animal indicating instinctive fear about a situation, that there is something horribly, horribly wrong and it's getting worse. Step 3, have another form of monster accept what's coming. You'll notice that Gluttony isn't fazed by the oncoming danger and in fact actively welcomes it. It's like, oh, hi friends, how are you doing? It's great to see you. Love y'all. I'm out. Peace. Mwah. We've got this scary dude reaffirming that, okay, if he is friends with this other thing, that must also be scary. Fourth, we talked a little bit about humanization earlier. We only see the eyes of these monsters, at least at first. And that's a great little touch. Like, you just see, like, peering out from underneath, out from these grates, just staring at you, waiting to pounce at you. Love the sound design as well.
Yeah, and when Gluttony talks, you can clearly tell that he is the complex of a child. Because just the way he acts, he's completely unaware of others like a child. He has a hard time understanding how to empathize. And he also has this blind faith for Father.
You can almost imagine that he fondly remembers having snack time with them. It's like, and what did you bring? Oh, you brought a dog girl. I brought a popsicle stick. I have just one more thing that I have to list on how this episode effectively creates horror. There's a fifth one. But before we talk to that, there are a few more things that happen. For one thing, we get to go back to Envy's stomach.
Double
It's short for what's going on here. Edward sees a Philosopher's Stone within Envy's stomach, which is interesting. I don't know why Envy would allow Edward to go to his most vulnerable spot, but okay. And he has a brief little moment of realization where he's like, oh yeah, that thing that I saw 5 minutes ago, actually that's super important. It's probably going to be my way out of here. I should probably do something about that.
I feel like this scene is disappointing. Like, if you were to ask me from the past, she would say, oh, he's about to destroy Envy or take the stone. But it doesn't add up to that. Or that isn't how it ends up.
I mean, that would be a natural thing to assume, and I would probably guess that most people watching that scene for the first time would think, oh, that's what Edward is going to do. But ultimately, the problem with this scene is that there's no real narrative drive. Edward has given up. He has no objective that we can clearly see, and it kills the tension of the scene. It feels like it happens and then it's over, which is unfortunate because getting to see Edward use his smarts and figure out how to save them all is kind of awesome once we get to it.
Also, the moment when he sees the Philosopher's Stone, you have this red light, and I love how it starts, because in a good story, you will introduce us to something that makes us hopeful, and then crush our hopes, and then give us something to hope for.
I love the way that Mary Robinette Kowal describes this, is that whenever your character tries something, it either ends up resulting in a, no, it didn't work, and now your house is on fire. Or a, yes, it did work, but...
now your house is on fire.
Yeah, but now your house is on fire. The idea of tactfully raising up the possibility for success while also raising the stakes.
Then we go to the sewers, which are apparently connected to the river Styx. We know this because eventually there's a Cerberus that shows up.
I love the designs on all of these monsters. They're almost too good for the amount of screen time that they have. You can imagine the animators all being like, yes, we get to design monsters. We get to go absolutely crazy, imagining all of the sorts of intense animal combinations that we could create, but we're only going to see each individual monster for 5 frames per monster? Whatever.
And the project is... Father hires a 3-headed dog. The story of Cerberus struggling to rejoin the working society. He's gonna get fired again.
Poor Cerberus. He's got 3 kids, all of whom have 3 heads.
Something about child services.
Yeah, something about pest control. This brings us to the 5th point that I wanted to make about how this show creates super effective horror. We've been told there's a monster. We've had nature confirm the danger that is inherent to this monster. We've had another form of monster corroborate or collaborate with this monster, affirming its danger. We've seen it. We've seen the eyes. It's like created this form of danger in our minds of like, oh, this is a scary monster. But now, after Scar and Mei Chang take them all out one by one, it seems that the danger is gone. Oh, good, what a wipe of brow, what a relief. Turns out, no, there's a bigger problem. And this is what I love, is like, this is the 5th thing. This is what great horror does. It's just like, oh, we fixed the problem. Actually, no, there's a bigger fish. The whole Full Metal Alchemist story follows this pattern. We're introduced to a danger. We're like, oh no, making Philosopher's Stones is bad. You don't want to do that. That's the problem, is Führer Bradley's making Philosopher's Stone is bad. And then, we see that he's bad and that it's bad. And then we're like, oh, King Bradley, we got you. And then the show's like, actually, no, he's just the smaller fish. There's a much bigger picture going on here. Surprise! Here's a ham. There's an important conversation that takes place around here between Al and Gluttony that you wanted to say something about, Hannah.
Gluttony establishes, oh, hey, Father made us. Guess what? Oh, and I made his sons too. Just not in the same way.
After this, we have babies! So many babies! There's lots of babies with big eyes.
Oh, look at the cute Führer.
I'm sure that nothing is going to possibly go wrong here.
Yeah.
Surprise, this is actually a terrible situation. It's not just babies. They're being raised up to murder each other.
Yes.
Exactly.
And apparently, Führer Bradley has had the same haircut since he was a teen.
And the same
Also-
eyes since he was a baby. Like, those are
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful green eyes.
Yes. Also, if you'll notice, the scientists, none of them have eyes, and this is a great technique.
The
to
scientists, by the
dehumanize
way,
them.
who are raising up these babies into teenage boys who stab each other with swordy swords.
Yep.
Swordy swords.
They're training them to be kingy kings of the landy land, and it's
A mistress of redundancy place.
redundancy departments of redundant. Yeah, I love how all of the scientists are eyeless. It connects them to
But then how do they do science? No, I'm just kidding.
with magic. It connects them to
They can
Shout
sense
Tucker,
things
but
like
more
lightning.
importantly, it disconnects us from them. It creates a barrier where we can't understand them. Their emotions are distant and unparsable. We see Führer Bradley rising through the ranks because he's a super cool dude, and he stabs the dude, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that." And one of the scientists is like, "Actually, you're a good person because you killed your friend. It's a good thing. You're gonna do great things in life. We have a secret serum that you should try." And he's like, "Okay." And they strap him down, and Father comes and is like, "Kissy kiss." Actually, no. I just really like getting in front of people's faces like that.
Really, really, really close, and just being like, "So, are you going to become my wrath?"
Which
Too
is so-
close, sir. Too close. Get out of my
Apparently,
face.
Father doesn't know about personal bubbles. If he did,
First the bubbles.
if he did, he'd know to always be an arm's distance, unless you really know that person, which clearly Führer Bradley doesn't. Not yet, anyways.
And then Führer Bradley looks to his left or right, I don't know which way, and he sees a door that is open and leads to a bunch of dead people. Who
Yeah,
also-
the previous test subjects.
And then the note I wrote down was, "Dang it, we forgot to have an intern close that door. Oh well, on with the science."
Can you imagine being an intern for a secret, terrible government organization that is raising king monsters by injecting them with souls?
That would be
I'll
a
tell
terrible
you,
idea.
it will make one heck of a thesis statement.
I don't
So
know
what-
if they'd even allow that to be a thesis statement. They'd probably just, I don't know.
So tell us, Sally Magoo, what did you learn working for the government? Nothing at all. So, the thing that I wanted to talk about with this backstory that we're getting behind Wrath, how he was raised up to be a king, how he was put in a position where he basically competed against other innocent children who were just found in the middle of nowhere and were like, "Hey, you get over here. We're gonna put you through the ringer," and is eventually put through this horrifying science test that results in him becoming an Ubermensch. This rings so strongly of Nazi Germany and exceptionalism. I love the line where they tell him, "You're destined for great things," knowing full well that he could potentially just die. And yet they are instilling in this man the idea that he is somehow better than everyone else. And he is better by virtue of his authority, by virtue of his prowess with a sword. And all the while, like, we assume, even though we don't see it, that these are not the first. This is not the first batch of humans to go through this experience. There is an implication that tests like this, that horrific, torturous things like this have been done for many, many years now, long before King Bradley came into the picture. We then realize we have an interesting framing device where we realize that Wrath wasn't just telling this to us. This is actually Wrath giving his backstory to Mustang. Hannah, you had something to say about that.
Wrath and Mustang have a heart-to-heart. Or Mustang asks Wrath, why doesn't he just go back to becoming human? And we have this moment that I feel like it hints at the fact that Wrath may be afraid of death. Because he says, why would I become a human? They're so fragile, and I don't want to go back to being weak.
Again, you can see that exceptionalism that has been ingrained into him and that all of the homunculi demonstrate in this show. They feel that by virtue of their power and aggression that they deserve, you know, the situation that they have been allotted in life. They feel special because of it, which is, of course, in contrast now to Mustang, who we don't really know how he feels about himself, but we know how he feels about other people. He was willing. We saw that he was willing to stick his neck out for a dude who is, for all intents and purposes, crippled for the rest of his life. There's no strategic advantage that he's going to get from that, other than the fact that they're friends and they care about each other. And then we cut back to the land of Oz, where Edward has figured out...
There's blood everywhere.
There's blood everywhere, all the time. And Ed has finally figured out, he's like, oh, Envy, I know what we're going to do, because there's a transmutation circle.
I know what we're going to do today. We're going to build a transmutation circle.
And through this, apparently Ed learns teleportation. Give this guy a couple of years, and things will be all Star Trek'd out.
Yeah, I think that there's an argument to be made that Ed might be a little smarter than is good for him. I think that the show tries really hard to convince you that what makes Ed special isn't the fact that he's smart, just the fact that he is the only one stupid to do any of the things that he does. But yeah, it is kind of an odd decision to be like, oh yeah, I'm a 14-year-old kid and I can do impossible things. Watch me Dougie.
What?
It's a dance that you wouldn't know anything about.
It sounds kind of lame, just by the name, and I just rhymed.
I wanted to talk a little bit about mysticism, but I think I'm going to save that for another episode. This might come up when we talk about what actually happened at Xerxes, because the connections that this show makes to Jewish mysticism is so cool. Like, there are so many little nuggets of insight that you can get from comparing the world of Full Metal Alchemist to alchemy and mysticism in Europe in the medieval times. Super cool, but we're going to talk about that later because we can move that later on. The complaint that you had, Timothy, is that during this time when they're figuring out how they're going to teleport each other into the real world, there's a lot of technobabble going on here.
No, that wasn't it. It wasn't the technobabble necessarily. It was the fact that...
Technobabble.
I mean, yes, it was more that Envy and that eventually Envy starts doing a monologue about how humans are worthless, and I'm like, oh my gosh, quit the philosophy and get on with the transmuting already.
Get on with it.
I have another problem with the dialogue, and that is Ed basically says to Ling, bro, this may just kill me. And he's just like, okay. Can you explain the process more? Sure, let me dumb it down for you and the audience.
Oh man, I hated that line. That was the point where I wanted to just shake my laptop and go, no, that's not how you do it. There are better ways.
We're not stupid. This is a thing I have seen so many times before where you'll have a character who something is explained to them and they're just like, I'm sorry, I don't get it. Could you explain it better? A good example is manga you should never read because it's awful. The Rose Princess,
Okay.
the main character is made to be stupid just for the sake that we can dumb down the dialogue. Every time someone explains something, she's just like, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Could you dumb it down so the audience can understand? I know what was just said. Just shut up and move on.
This is a visual medium. It almost doesn't matter what you say, quite frankly. Like, the great example that I'm thinking of right now of how showing is so much better than telling is Inception. You can watch that movie without understanding any of the logic behind what goes on, and it's probably better that you don't understand it because there are some holes in there that you could drive the entire plot through. But it doesn't matter because they do such a good job of showing you visually what is happening, of tying everything together through visual language, through the frame that, like, you have such amazing tools at you. The problem with this here isn't that they're taking the time to dumb it down, because you want to be understood. You want your audience to understand the magic that you are employing in order to get the story going along. The problem is that it doesn't matter how you explain it. Just show us in a way that is accessible. And the show has demonstrated time and time again that it is more than capable of conveying complicated ideas in a compact manner using just the visuals alone. Saying, can you please dumb it down for me? No, don't Interstellar this movie. So they do the transmutation thingy. Envy offers his Philosopher's Stone as fuel for it. And it's like, okay. And they go to the other side. There's a lovely little moment
wait. I have a note.
Okay.
When Envy offers the Philosopher's Stone and the souls in him, Ed is just like, no, that's not good. Envy has a moment where he's just like, look, it's gotta be done. It doesn't matter. These aren't people anymore. And it kind of reminded me of in Tokyo Ghoul, where you have a premise that there are these creatures that need to eat humans, and how they justify it is, well, we need to eat these people to survive, so just close your eyes and chew.
This leads to what I think is maybe my favorite payoff of this entire episode. Because at this point, we've had several major setups about or regarding the nature of these souls that are contained within Envy. We've heard that they aren't people, that they don't really have thoughts or feelings, that they have been rotted away and have no sense of themselves, that they are basically less than human. And all of this is completely counteracted when, as they are moving through the gate and as they are traveling to the other side, one of the faces we see looking at Edward dissolving, saying,
"Thank you."
Oh, so good. Because it puts all of those moments back into perspective, and you suddenly realize, oh, no, these really are people. They have thoughts, they have feelings, like they're still alive, and they want to be freed. Which is not something that we will get anything further from for many, many episodes, but dang, what an interesting revelation that the show does a fairly good job of employing later on during the finale.
Yep.
What I also love about this moment is that at the same time, we're seeing Gluttony and Al approaching the door, getting ready to see good old father. And both of that, like, I love the visual decision that as they are both going to this new world, for Al and Gluttony, it is father. For Edward, Ling, and Envy, it is the regular world. Both, as they transition to these new states, are traveling into the white light. The fact that those journeys are displayed in parallel is so lovely. Love it. And then, this is the moment.
As Edward is going through the exit of
As he appears at the gate.
Oh, the gate.
and he sees Al's body.
Elmo! No, yeah, it's Al.
And at least he's not stinky. But somebody, please give that man a Snickers, because he is malnourished.
Malnourishment.
And look at those hips. Dang. Such definition. I mean, I realize that it's because he's totally emaciated, but dang. This isn't Mr. Noodle. This isn't who I was expecting to see through the door.
He's also naked.
Ew,
Yeah.
gross. Al sees
At
his
the
bro,
end, if
and
we
he's
were
like,
to have it cut just a little bit lower, we'd see a very specific part of the male anatomy that is not suitable for children.
But thankfully,
see.
Al gets to maintain some semblance of his dignity in this show. Ed sees his brother and is like, hey, I found you should come with me. It's very important. You should come with me. And Al's body delivers the chilling line of, I'm not your body. Goodbye now. Which A, is interesting because it tells us a little bit about the nature of bodies and souls in this world, which we didn't know about before. B, it's interesting because it raises the stakes about how they're going to get him back. Only Al can get his body back. Edward can't help him with that. That's an interesting raising of the stakes. And C, It's interesting because, oh, poor Edward. Like, he sees his brother right there. He's right there. And his brother is like, nope, see you later.
Yeah.
See you later, Gator.
The hands come out cackling with children's laughter and like, okay, it's time for you to go now. And Ed's like, no, I don't want to go. And then the door slams and he's gone and Al's back to being alone. And then, and this is such a stupid moment, but I love it nonetheless, he rips open the door and he's like, don't you dare go anywhere. I'm coming back for you because you're my brother. You stay right there. Don't you move a muscle. Just trust me. I'm going to save you. And then the doors close for realsies this time. And it's so dumb, but it's so good.
It's so amazing, but it's also really stupid. But it's also really awesome.
It makes no sense within the context of this world. I feel like it breaks about half a dozen different rules that this show has already established. But I don't care because, oh my gosh, I love these two characters.
I love these characters too.
They're adorable.
And
They're awesome.
I think that we can forgive it as a moment of brief non-diegesis. I assume that this moment didn't actually happen within the context of the show. Like, if this was a real world, that's not what happened. But
For those of you who do not know what diegesis is, when something is diegesis, it is something that is diegetic. It is something that is actually happening in reality. If you have a moment that is non-diegetic, it is not really happening.
So, for example, the music in musicals is almost always non-diegetic. Nobody knows in a musical that they are actually singing. Diegesis is usually used in the context of sound, but I think that this works here because in order for this to actually happen, it would break so many rules. But we can accept it as a part of the visual storytelling, as a part of the narrative, as just sort of something that is there for us, just for us, and not for the actual characters.
Okay.
And we had a few more of the notes about translations, but I think it's time for us to go. So, lightning round final thoughts. Hannah, what did you think about this episode?
Xiaomei is mentioned as a cat only in the dubbed version. In the dubbed, Mei calls Devil a creep. In the subbed, or in the original, it's a devil. Now is our chance, is what Mei says. In the original, this is the perfect reason to go in. In the dubbed, only in the subbed version is Al doubtful that his brother might still be alive. And receive my wrath versus be my wrath is something that Father says. I'm done. Good night.
That's all from our resident dub versus sub expert. And now for our resident Old Yeller expert, Timothy. What did you have to say about this episode? Final thoughts.
I liked it. That was good.
And now from me, the resident expert on things sound and apparently European history. It's a fine episode. It's got a great ending. It wanders a little bit in the Al, Ed, and Ling aspect, but there are lovely bits of detail in here that kind of stick with you for the rest of the show. And for that, I kind of have to give this episode props. It's clear that the animators enjoyed making it. I enjoyed watching it. And that's all from us today. That's all that we have to say. We will see you, or I guess hear you, next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.